My name is Ska Keller. I'm the Refugee Policy Spokesperson of the Green Group in the European Parliament.
Do ministers have the right balance when it comes to the priorities for migrants? Migrants arriving on the one hand, and then the policy of returns on the other.
I think the Home Affairs ministers have completely the wrong balance. They're only looking at return, they're looking at how to strengthen the border, but they're missing the point, because currently the problem that we have is one of missing capacity, missing solidarity, and also missing will to receive people. The people who are coming to Europe right now are refugees in need of protection. It does not help to talk about deportation or whatever, because refugees have to find protection, they have to be dealt with in terms of their asylum application, they have to be housed. All those issues are not being talked about at all.
What do you make of the returns policy that the ministers are now proposing?
On the one hand, it's very worrying to see how much effort and focus they put on return. The people have not even been able to come here. There's people dying in the sea because they want to reach safety, but ministers will only talk about return. And then on top of that, they have added a very extra and particular point, namely there is mentioning of ministers also wanting to send back refugees, especially Syrian refugees, to refugee camps in Jordan or in Lebanon. And this is quite outrageous, because those countries in the neighborhood of Syria already taking in and housing the majority of Syrian refugees, many more than the whole European Union together. And the EU, as one of the richest places on earth, should do much more to help Syrian refugees. We should be doing much more than Lebanon is doing. Right now we have many more inhabitants, much bigger GDP, and Lebanon has many problems of their own. So Europe needs to live up to its historical commitment and obligation, as well as to our legal texts.
Where do you fear refugees will be sent? You mentioned there the possibility of them going back to neighbouring countries around Syria. If that's the case, what will happen to them?
Refugees that are being sent back to camps in neighboring countries, for example, of Syria, will face a situation where they have no perspective for the future, because the war in Syria is not going to end anytime soon. So they will be sitting in the camps where they currently have food shortages, because the World Food Programme and UNHCR are not getting enough funds, and that's not going to change very soon, even if the EU member states now want to send more money. They have very little, if any, education. They are often not allowed to work. They have no perspective for the future. And this might be possible to live with for weeks or months, but not for so many years as people have to do it right now.
What do you make of the argument by some that there are too many people coming to Europe and Europe simply can't cope with the numbers? We understand now 600,000 coming to Europe, arriving in Europe this year so far.
Anyone who thinks that too many refugees are coming to Europe should look at the numbers that Lebanon, for example, is housing more than 1 million refugees, and Lebanon is a country of 4 million inhabitants. Think the EU as a place of 500 million inhabitants. It's one of the richest areas in the world, can and needs to do much more. And yes, that's not always easy, and it puts some problems in front of us, but I do think it's possible to deal with refugees, to give them protection, if we put our minds to it, if all 28 member states participate and actually do it, and if we all understand that it's our commitment, our obligation, and that also governments will tell to their citizens that yes, we're going to do it. It's not so easy, definitely not, but that they put some political effort into it.
Just a final question about the British. The British don't want to be part of any European scheme. What do you make of the British attitude? How is that perceived in the rest of Europe?
I think it's very sad that the British government has decided not to participate in any relocation scheme, for example, from Italy and Greece to countries that are very much affected by arrivals, and especially in the case of Greece, they simply do not have the money to deal with that. I think it's unfortunate that the British government is placing itself so much outside of the European Union. Solidarity is a key factor of the European Union, and very often the UK will need the solidarity of other member states. So I think it's just fair if everyone does their bit to solidarity.